Alright, what's up everyone? This is NinjaDeathStrike bringing you another Pokemon Black and White Wi-Fi battle. This is versus StarforceD, someone I met on a forum, and so he's going to be using a Sandstorm team. I'm using my standard team, and I noticed right off the bat that most of his team is weak to Rotom, so I lead with him. He leads with Tyranitar. Here I predicted Tyranitar to try and set up Stealth Rocks, as most Tyranitar nowadays run a mix set with Stealth Rock, Crunch, a Fire move, and then either Superpower or Ice Beam. So I switch into Cheese, predicting him to just set up his Stealth Rocks, and I was planning on bouncing those back at him. But instead he goes for Dragon Dance, which caught me off guard. But luckily Cheese is still faster even after a Dragon Dance, so I'm able to set up a Reflect. And Cheese goes down, but I bring in Bad Horse, and Bad Horse kills this guy's whole team. So here I make a small misprediction. I thought he would switch out, and I was pretty sure I outsped the rest of his team, so I set up instead of just going right for the attack. And that ends up bad for me because even though his attack doesn't do any damage, he breaks my balloon. So now I'm going to have to watch out for Earthquake from any of his guys. In comes Garchomp, and I'm going to guess that it's Scarfed, especially since he went out of the way to pop my balloon. And therefore, I'm going to switch into Rotom. He does go for an Earthquake, which is nice for me. And now I'm going to hope that it doesn't have Sub and try to burn it. When he switches out, that basically confirms my suspicion that he is indeed Scarfed. And he brings in Empoleon, who's not going to be too affected by the Sub since he's running a especially oriented Empoleon, but at least I'm going to be getting residual damage every turn. And I know I'm going to be faster unless it's Scarfed, which would be awful. So I use Volt Change to switch out. I bring in my Ferrothorn, and he goes for Agility, which is fine because this Empoleon's not going to be able to hurt me. And in fact, nothing on this team can really hurt Ferrothorn. As you'll see later, that's going to cause him big problems late in the game. So he goes for Surf, which does less than 25%, and I go ahead and set up Leech Seed. In case he wanted to switch out, anything that comes in, I wanted to be able to start taking its health down. And this next turn, I'm going to choose to set up my Rocks, as he finally decides to switch out, since Empoleon's clearly not going to be able to do anything in that situation. In comes Regirock. I don't know what it wants to do, so I'm just going to stay in and see what it does, and then I'll be able to figure out what its set is and decide how I want to react to it. So it goes for Curse right off the bat, which I wasn't too worried about, honestly. I have plenty of answers on this team to a Regirock. I know that that thing is beastly in the sand since its special defense gets boosted 50%. I wasn't sure what else it had, so after I get a Leech Seed on it, I'm going to switch out and try to burn it. Unfortunately, my first Will-O-Wisp misses, and he just keeps setting up Curse. Here he's going to go for a Rock Slide, and a +2 Rock Slide, as you'll see in a moment, doesn't do a whole lot to Rotom. It does over half, but considering how much his attack was boosted, that's not bad. So luckily for me, this next turn, my Will-O-Wisp is not going to miss, so I'm going to burn him. And at this point, I was pretty sure that I had that thing beaten, since it could curse as much as it wanted to, but it wasn't going to be able to touch Ferrothorn. So on this next turn, I'm going to switch back into Ferrothorn just to take whatever attack it wants to attempt. And wow, there's so much extra damage after the end. These turns are taking forever. Anyhow, I'm ahead of myself. We'll wait here for a second. There we go. In comes Spike again because he's not scared of the Regirock at all. So he decides to rest, and I thought he might have Sleep Talk, which is actually a dumb move on my part since I'd already seen all of his moves. He has Curse, Rock Slide, Rest, and something else that doesn't matter. But anyhow, I stay in one turn just in case he has Sleep Talk, but it turns out he doesn't, which means I'm free to go into the Shadow. And since he'll still be sleeping for another turn, I get a free sub. And if you guys have watched any of my other videos, you know that giving the Shadow a free sub is a very, very bad idea, because once he's safely behind a sub, he's able to wreak havoc. So first turn in, he's gonna wake up this turn, but it won't matter. I set up my sub, and he uses his only attack, which is important here because on the next turn, I'm gonna go for disable, and once I disable his rock slide, he can't do anything to me. Literally, he can't do anything to me. He can't attack. So I'm free to do whatever the heck I want after he's disabled. Of course, I'm going to go for a sub because I assumed he would switch out, not wanting to leave in his Regirock that can't attack. Instead, I think he's going to decide to curse again, as if that's going to help his situation any. It should have become rather clear to him at this point that he's in a hopeless fight. But he decides to stay in, and I'm just going to start Shadow Balling until I get his health down low enough to where a Focus Blast will take him out. If Rock Slide does become enabled again and he goes for it, I can just disable it the next turn and then sub as he switches. So while that happens, I'm just going to take a second to talk about weather teams in Gen 5 and kind of team building in general. As you'll see with this battle, what this guy did was he just decided he wanted to make a Sandstorm team, so he took Tyranitar and then just took a bunch of guys that looked cool and benefited from sand and threw them all together on the same team. And that's a really, really bad way to go about building a team, especially a weather team, because most of the Pokemon that usually benefit from that weather have the same kinds of weaknesses and the same problem Pokemon. So, as you'll see later in this battle, even though all of his guys are really strong in the sand, they can't do anything against the few threats that I have on them. And that's going to end up being the downfall of his entire team. So if you're thinking about making a weather team, you really need to put a couple of oddballs in there who are going to cover the rest of your team's weaknesses. And that's actually a really important thing to keep in mind anytime you build a team. You can't just throw a bunch of guys that look cool together into your party and call them a team. You need to think about your weaknesses and think about what kind of threats you're going to have to deal with. Anyhow, back to the battle. Regirock goes down. In comes Empoleon. I don't want to risk a Focus Blast miss. So instead, I'm going to go for Shadow Ball, and he's going to live with a sliver of health. The burn is also going to take him out this next round, meaning that I can't set up a sub or really do anything else. So Gengar is going to be exposed to whatever he wants to bring in. He ends up going to a Stoutland, and for those of you who don't know, one of Stoutland's abilities is Sand Rush, meaning that his speed's doubled in the sand, and he's clearly going to outspeed Gengar. So I'm just going to go back to Ferrothorn because Ferrothorn's not hurt by anything else that he has. And now I'm going to speed this video up to 4 times speed, since the rest of this battle is just me shutting down his entire team with one Pokemon. You'll see he's going to switch around a lot. He brings in Garchomp, and since it's Scarfed, it's going to have to pick one move that it wants to stick with, meaning I can leave Ferrothorn in. If he does have a fire move, it still won't kill me, and I can switch into Rotom the next round. But he decides to go for Outrage, and it's going to do, again, less than 25%. So I'm just going to leave Spike in. He's taking Leech Seed damage and Iron Barbs damage every turn. He switches out, but I predict that and go for the Leech Seed. Unfortunately, I miss, and then Landalos U-turns right back out, takes more Iron Barbs damage. Garchomp comes in again, which is fine. I'm just going to Leech Seed it and then Protect while it dies. And his other 2 Pokemon, even, you'll see here in a minute, that even Landalos with a Sand Power boosted Earthquake is not going to be enough to take down Ferrothorn. So it just really goes to show you that you need to have variety on your teams when you put them together. You need to have special attackers and physical attackers, and you need to think about the threats that you're going to be facing and figure out a way to counter them. So good game, StarforceD. Thanks for the match. It was a lot of fun. Stay tuned, guys. I'll have more coming your way shortly.